How do you go from being homeless to where you have a company, you're selling your company, you're moving to the West Coast? How do you actually go from sort of point A to point B?
It is really your will to want to change, and life will try to break you in so many different ways. And I just had a will that would not break.
This is In Community with Fahad Khwaja. Everette Taylor, thanks for being on the show.
Of course.
I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in and start by asking if you can tell us a bit about one of your earliest memories. Let's take us all the way back to the beginning.
One of my earliest memories. That's a really, really good question. I don't get that question very often. Like, I was like, you know, I've heard everything. And then you hit me with a question that I haven't even really thought about. But one of my earliest childhood memories to me was how obsessed I was about music. I was super obsessed about music. And this is aging me a little bit, but I would like get my mom's cassette tapes and go and like her boombox. Do Gen Z even know what a boombox is? Like, I don't know if they know what a.
I think Gen Z knows what a boombox is.
Okay. I would get like a boombox.
Plus, everything that was cool in the 90s is cool again now, right?
Yeah. So I would get a boombox, and I would literally like perform like I was these artists. Like I had aspirations to do music and do art and do all these like very creative things as a kid. And like my earliest memories, it involves like my joy of like music, singing, my joy of drawing and painting. I remember being young and wanting to do theater and stuff like that. So I was like all around like just like a creative kid. Unfortunately, I stifled a lot of that creativity for a long time because I started to get bullied for my creative interests. But my earliest memories is just like just loving creative things, music, art, acting. The whole thing was like I was just obsessed as a kid.
How early on was that happening? Do you remember how old you were?
I mean, that was like 5, 6 years old, like just being like super young, like being obsessed with those things. And like really, I think about my elementary school years was very much influenced by the arts. I made like all city chorus where they picked like one boy and one girl from each school. Like, I was very much into all the things, and then I put that to the side and really focused on sports as I got older. But my first memories definitely circled around like creative things, whether it was movies, music, et cetera, et cetera. I remember going to buy my first album, which was Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z in 1996. I was just a kid. But like those memories still like are ingrained in me for sure.
So you were singing and playing music, both?
So I didn't have any access to instrumentation. Shout out to, people cutting music programs and things like that. I didn't have access to actual instrumentation, but I did have access to just music and the radio and all those things. And so, yeah, I would pretend to play the guitar. I would pretend to play the saxophone because I didn't actually have, those instruments and all.
So tell me a little more about where you grew up. What was the community like and what was the vibe where you were growing up?
I grew up in Southside Richmond, Virginia, 804. Very proud to be from there. I mean, I just grew up in a very standard, the hood urban area, predominantly Black and Latino neighborhood. And I just, I experienced a lot of crazy things. I experienced gangs, I experienced drugs, prostitution. A lot of men in my family, um, were involved in things that they should have been involved in. And also, I started to go down that path as well because that's all I knew and all I saw that was around me. But I feel like I had a pretty normal childhood despite some of the chaotic things around me. I think the thing that was abnormal about my childhood was the amount of freedom that I had just growing up in general. My mom worked nights. So, when I was coming home from school, she was either already gone for work or she was like heading to work. So that just allowed a young kid or a young teenager to just be able to roam free to his own devices. And I think it was a good and a bad thing. I think it allowed me to get exposure to the streets and a lot of things that to this day gives me some of the common sense and street savvy that I know. Like, a lot of people are just book smart, and I'm very fortunate to be, street smart. And I think that's really helped me throughout my career more than anything that I could learn in a book. But also, I saw a lot of things I probably shouldn't have saw at an early age. And I also, one of the things that I talk about this with my therapist is that I had to learn how to self cope with a lot of things, right? And self soothe in a lot of ways because my mom was at work. So if I had a bad day or like say I got in a fight or something happened, like I had to come home and like kind of deal with that on my own. And so it made me very fiercely independent and gave me a level of grit that I think has, helped me throughout my entire career.
Did you have family nearby as well?
Yeah, definitely had family nearby, but I mean, that was our unit, So, um, and yeah, just a very independent childhood for sure. And my sister was like, she would stay in the house, so she would stay in the house. I was always the one going out and getting in trouble.
You mentioned that as you were getting older, you got more into sports and you
Yep.
moved away from the more artistic or creative pursuits. Was that because you were being bullied on that sort of artistic side of things? Or was it something else? Just your interest, for instance?
Yeah, you got to understand this is like pre-Pharrell. Like there's like how they have before Christ, after Christ. You know what I'm saying? You got BP and AP before Pharrell and after Pharrell. I think Pharrell, especially being from Virginia, like really changed the game for a lot of black and brown creatives in the sense of like you know just being yourself, being the nerd. I mean, his band was literally called NERD. And like it was cool, like it's not it became cool to like those things and be a creative and tap into your own inner nerd and like creative side. And like when I was younger though, in the BP years, uh it wasn't cool to do those things, and it was acceptable to do sports. Or if you're going to do music, you had to like, you had to rap, like, so being artsy was not the wave. And like, you know, you have that peer pressure of wanting to be accepted and wanting girls to like you and not wanting to be teased and all those things. And so I think that all kind of coincided during that same time, especially like going into those middle school years, which are very fundamental of like this feeling of wanting to be accepted.
At what point did you start to see things shift? You were headed in a direction, but decided that maybe it's time to move in a different direction. When did you actually see that shift?
I mean, I was pretty hard headed, to be honest. Like, I could have very easily ended up in jail, ended up doing like, I look at so many situations from like being a teenager to like 19, 20 years old of like 21, like where I'm like, wow, my life could have completely went in another direction. Um, I think there was some few fundamental shifts. Number one was when I was 14, stopped selling drugs and I got my first job. And, I always talk about how important exposure is. One, exposure to a craft, like I think is really, really important, even in the age of AI, for people to have a craft or something that they're really, good at. And I found marketing. Like I found marketing. That was my first job at 14, was a marketing job. I think the second piece was that marketing job supplied books for different like national parks and museums. And so I was spending time in these spaces and I was meeting people that I never would have met before, meeting people from different countries, different parts of the US, that was like a really big moment for me, especially getting out of the hood and like, experiencing just like I remember hearing my first British accent and being like, yo, that's crazy. Like this is they really talk like that. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. Like um and that was important to me. But I still was like going back home to the hood, like, it's like that you experience that and then you get put right back into the jungle, right? I think the other shift was actually going to college, and even before that, being homeless and like seeing the things I experienced, but going to college and being put in a predominantly white institution, and the culture shock of what that is, and taking me out of my comfort zone. Whereas like at work, it wasn't necessarily my comfort zone, but I like did my few hours and then I came back to where I was used to. You put me in Southwest Virginia, in Blacksburg, Virginia, like there was no hiding. Like it was like white people everywhere. I was like, whoa, this is crazy, and I think that was a really fundamental moment for me. The last piece, I don't know if I've told this story before, maybe once or twice, was my first time back from college. This is before I dropped out. I was back home, and I saw a couple of my homeboys. They were like, "Yo, bro, get in the car." So I got in the car with them. I was like, "Yo, y'all ain't got nothing crazy on y'all." He's like, "Nah, nah, nah, nah." We get pulled over by the cops, and um, we get pulled over, and then they're trying to hide guns. They're trying to hide drugs. I'm like, "Bro, you told me you didn't have anything in this car." And so the police stops us. They tell us to get out of the car. And I'll never forget this. They're like, yo, what's in your pocket? Empty out your pockets. So I'm like emptying out my pockets, and my Virginia Tech, my college ID, like comes out and drops on the ground. And the officer says, hey, you're a Hokie, which is like the school mascot of Virginia Tech. And I was like, yeah. He was like, oh, I went there, graduated class of 86 or whatever he said. And because of that, they ended up letting us go. But that was an important moment because it taught me that I couldn't move the same way that I used to. I couldn't be around the same people, and things like that. And I had to forge my own path. And forging my own path was, building my own companies, moving out of Virginia, embracing that creativity that I had put aside for a long time, and really stepping into myself. So that was like a pivotal moment. I'll always, sorry, that was a long ass answer, but that was like a very pivotal moment for me.
That's a great story. And, you know, I feel like we often have these moments when we look back on our lives, real moments that happened,
Yeah,
and we didn't know at the time, but they became defining moments for us.
100%. Yep.
So let's talk more about that. Let's talk more about college. You went to college. When you went there, did you
Hmm.
have a sense of what you wanted to do? Did you have a sense of where you wanted to go? I think people who have an idea of your background and your story, they would probably say it's not traditional, but some of the
Hmm.
elements might actually be more common than people think. And, maybe we don't hear about it as much. Did you have a feel for what was going to come next for you?
Um, that's a really good question. Uh, I yeah, this is a good question. Um, I denied my path for a very long time because my path wasn't what I saw for myself, Um, you're an athlete and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to the NBA. I'm gonna, play ball or whatever, experiencing and getting introduced to marketing at 14, you're still not at 14 years old being like, you know what? I'm gonna be a CMO one day. I'm gonna be a marketer. I'm gonna be a creative brand director. You know what I mean? You're not thinking that at 14 years old. And so it was through the experiences of my life that kind of like pushed me to that point, marketing. I'll tell you this. When I was homeless in high school, I just wanted to get out and I wanted to figure something out. And I found all of these like young tech CEOs and founders. And I was like, oh, I guess I could do that too. And that's why I applied to Virginia Tech. And It was the only college I applied to because, my girlfriend at the time, even though I was homeless, helped me with the application to get it in. And, um, you know, tech wasn't necessarily a passion in the beginning. It was a way out. I was like, I saw these guys and I was just, hey, this is a path. I can do that too. If these guys can do it, I can do it. But it wasn't a passion. Marketing, I was good at it at an early age, but I didn't say to myself, wow, I want to be a marketer. Um, Life just kind of went in that direction. But what I will say is, starting my first company at 19, selling it at 21, seeing the impact that I had on me and my family, moving to the West Coast, and the first job I got was a marketing job, and it was like, oh, well, is this what I'm supposed to do? You know? Um it just kind of happened. And I can say that I made intentional choices and I took risks, but also things kind of just worked out in a lot of ways. Yeah. I feel like marketing chose me. I didn't choose marketing.
What was it that made you decide that it was time to move out to the West Coast to be in that really heavy tech environment? Was there a moment that made you realize that was going to be the right move for you?
Oh, because I sold my company and then I found out months later that that person quickly flipped that company and sold it for a lot more money. And I was like, I need to figure out what's happening in Silicon Valley. What is happening on the West Coast? Because there's a lot of money out here and I need to educate myself and learn and figure it out. And that's what pushed me. When I found out that news, I was on the West Coast like a few weeks later, literally.
And what about your girlfriend?
Oh, you would ask that. I had many women in between that, or let me rephrase that. That was a high school relationship. At that time, there was a few years in between that relationship. Not a lot of women. See, listen, you're gonna get me in trouble. Yo, I, I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I enjoyed my 20s.
Let's keep going through the journey though, and just the experiences that came next. You talked a little bit about being homeless. How do you go from that to getting to that point where you have a company, you're selling your company, you're moving to the West Coast? How do you actually go from sort of point A to point B?
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that I like talking about the least, but everyone wants to talk about it. It's like one of those things, uh, and I understand this as a marketer. People are attracted to the hardships, right? People are attracted to, like, how did you get out of that? But at the same time, that is real trauma, and it's not something I honestly don't think about being homeless unless I'm doing an interview. And what I will say about being homeless without going into detail, because there's other people that are affected by this story, is that I just had a will that would not break. And whether it's homelessness, whether it's an abusive relationship, whether it's poverty, whether it's whatever bad situation that you're in, it is really your will to want to change your predicament, your situation, and life will try to break you in so many different ways. And you just have to stay strong and you have to stay optimistic. And throughout that entire process, I had very hard days, but I never gave up hope. I never quit. There were days that I wanted to quit. There was days I wanted to give up, but I wouldn't. And I had a North Star of what I wanted for myself. And so ultimately, avoiding all of the gritty, nasty details, it was really just that. It was that determination that I had, that I didn't want to have myself or my family ever in a bad situation like that ever again.
Then, as you made that move and you ended up on the West Coast, how did you actually even go about finding your footing?
Yeah, so I actually landed, I was in between Orange County and San Mateo, which is in the Bay Area. I started working for a guy named Sean Ellis. If you're familiar with growth hacking or growth marketing, he's the guy who started that. He like literally coined the term growth hacking. We actually co-founded growthhackers.com together and started that together. But yeah, I was young, and I just reached out to him because I was looking for opportunities to bring me to Silicon Valley and the West Coast really, really fast. And so that's what brought me out there. I started working for a company called Qualaroo. We started growthhackers.com together, and that's what brought me out to California. And he told me he could only pay me very little money, and I lived in a studio apartment with another grown man. uh, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. And I made it happen. But that was a culture shock of like the world of Silicon Valley, which I needed to experience, but also Southern California as well. Like the juxtaposition of those two areas, I think were um interesting to experience.
Did you know anyone out there at all?
No, I didn't know anybody.
How did you go about meeting people and even building some sort of a community or group of folks around you?
You know, it's crazy. Uh there's this joke about uh guys will play basketball with the same guys for 12 years, 15 years, and not even know their real names or anything about them.
Nicknames, maybe.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I started at the gym, like I still play ball, and I was going to the gym and like trying to meet guys, but no one really wanted to hang outside of the gym like that. And then I did the dating app thing, right? Like, going on a dating app. And this is before I had a, you know, public brand or anything like that. So I'm on a dating app thing, and that was hard too, And I remember like, cause I was so focused. I've actually never talked about this ever. You're getting like an exclusive right now. So I was on the dating apps, I'm in my early 20s, and I'm working my butt off all day, every day. And so I came from a place in Virginia where, like, hey, if you schedule a date or something, like you stick to it, whatever. Man, I did not know the flakiness of the West Coast, of the Californians. And, I would be like, oh, we're going to go to dinner on Friday. And so I'm looking forward to it all week because I'm like working, working, working. Mind you, I don't know anybody else. So I don't have any backup plans, and then they'll cancel last minute or whatever it is. And then I was like, man, I'm just like stuck. And so what happened was, through my own dating app failures and through me not successfully turning my hoop friends into homies, it really just made me focus on work, man. And those first couple, few years, this is not the healthiest thing. I wouldn't recommend this to anybody, but there's certain times, sometimes the bad things in your life give you an advantage over others. So while, Drake has this line, while all my friends out partying, I'm just making the music that they party to. That was the first years of my life on the West Coast because I didn't have too much socially happening, that I just really was heads down and focused on the work.
At what point did you start to feel like maybe you weren't just going to be living paycheck to paycheck and there was going to be a big change coming while you were at work?
Well, two things. One was Qualaroo getting acquired. So being the head of marketing for a startup and like it actually getting acquired is like, whoa, that's crazy. The second thing was starting a platform like growthhackers.com and being something that was having like exponential growth. Like, I started my own company, but it didn't have exponential growth. So to see something like that and build a community of so many people, that was great. And that attracted a lot of people who wanted to work with me. Me having that early success, one, allowed me to start my first marketing firm, or my only marketing firm I ever started, Millicent's, which I could start bringing on clients. So it was like, oh, wow, I can have this salary being the head of marketing here, but then I can have my own entrepreneurial thing going on here. And because of that, I was able to financially get into a better place. And all of that success led me to getting my first CMO role at 25, which really, started to take things off. But I took this path of like, oh, wow, I'm going to outwork everyone and work a full time job while also building marketing companies at the same time and getting paid simultaneously from both sides.
What was your superpower that actually helped you be able to achieve all that and to keep going? And what is it today, even? This episode is brought to you by Philo Ads. Philo Ads is built for brands that want premium connected TV placements without the premium price tag. With a 55% multicultural viewing audience and highly engaged audiences on fan favorite TV networks like A&E, TV One, MTV, OWN, Lifetime, and more, Philo Ads delivers a CTV experience that gets results. So kick off your next campaign with Philo Ads today at ads.philo.tv. That's ads.philo.tv.
My superpower is and has always been being left and right brained. You know, what I noticed in Silicon Valley and like the tech world was that there wasn't really brand savvy marketers, like people who were super creative and thought about things in a creative way. It was very data driven. And very analytical and well, obviously everything should be performance based, but like very performance based thinking. And I think my ability to be able to be a technical marketer or a full stack marketer in that way, but at the same time also do the brand and creative stuff. It was crazy because like the brand, like the companies that had figured out brand and creative were looking for like that technical side. And then the technical people were like, man, we need some of that brand and creative side. And I was like, hey, yo, I can do both. Hire me to be your CMO. So that I think that was the thing. And then also, like I said, you know, for a lot of people, hey, they have relationships, they have kids, they have all these things that they have that are, prioritized in their lives. And like, I think that's very beautiful. I just didn't have that. And so I could just completely focus on the work.
Well, since that CMO role, you've had a number of other roles. You've gone
Yeah.
on to sort of bigger and different types of companies, different
hmm
categories. Walk me through that a bit, and especially about the transitions and what drove each one and how that went for you.
Yeah. So, you know, I talked about quality and growth hackers having the opportunity to be a CMO and actually get paid real money from an established brand. Like Sticker Mule is the biggest sticker company in the U. Like they kill it. And so to be able to do that at a young age, it was like a no brainer for me. But the truth of the matter is that I was not a CMO. I was a great marketer, but I wasn't a CMO yet. And that company, while I had success there, I didn't really truly know how to lead a team and things like that. And so I kind of had to go back to the drawing board. And luckily, as things were kind of getting a little bit shaky at Sticker Mule, Microsoft came to me and was like, hey, you want to run growth for us in China for new apps that we're building? I was like, hell yeah, let's get this paycheck. Let's, keep this thing going. Because every marketer, every person's been in a situation where they're like, man, I might lose my job. Like this is, whether you're not getting along with the CEO or boss or whoever. And that's kind of the state that I was in at that time, despite growing the company 40%, by the way, during my year there. And so go to Microsoft, but I knew that was a temporary thing and I needed to find my next thing. And like after being at a company as like Sticker Mule, I was like, oh, I'm a CMO. Like I want another big CMO job, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing was, I had only been a CMO for a year and I was 26 years old, 26, 27 years old. And one thing I would say that, some people may agree with this or not agree with this. And I think this is important, especially during a time where a lot of marketing jobs are not open or like not available, is sometimes you have to humble yourself. And in that moment, I had to humble myself to actually go to a smaller startup that wanted to bring me in as their CMO, um, and scale that up because other companies weren't giving me the opportunity. And so I went to Skirt. Skirt was a fast growing startup, but small. We had like probably under 200 employees or whatever it is. And yeah, we scaled that, and that company got acquired. And that led me to actually being full time entrepreneurial for the first time in my life since my first company, where I just focused on companies like Pop Social and Millicents and ArtX, and I grew those companies and tried to scale those companies. And it wasn't until the artsy, I thought I was going to be maybe entrepreneurial for the rest of my life. Period. Not take another 9 to 5, quote unquote. But then the artsy opportunity came by, and it was a space that I was super passionate about, and it was like a well-known brand. It was like, wow, this is like a real truly global brand, and to be CMO and partner with a super experienced CEO and learn from them, it was like a no-brainer for me.
Let's take a step back for a second. How did you navigate that move to China? Because I don't want to skip over
Yeah.
that. That's a
Okay.
massive,
Yeah.
massive move.
I had traveled out of the country at that point, but I had never been to China. I had never been to Beijing, but I would go back and forth between LA and Beijing. So that was a definitely a difference. I only went a few times, but like, so I wasn't spending like a ton of time there, but that was like a culture shock in itself.
What was the biggest culture shock in China? Was it the lifestyle, the people, the culture on the ground, or was it actually the company?
Oof. you know, I was working for Microsoft China, not Microsoft in Washington. And so how they did business, how they go about things was completely different. So I think just the mannerisms and like the customs of the people of China, it was a learning curve for me, going there. And I think also, yeah, you just didn't really see black people. It was like crazy. It was like, I would have people coming up and thinking I was must be like a famous basketball player or somebody, something like that. I'm only 5'11". I'm not even tall. And people would want to take pictures with me and stuff like that. It was crazy. But yeah, that was a really interesting experience to especially be a person of color, like a black person or black or brown person in that space. Have you been to China?
I have been to China. I actually was there with a friend who's black. And just like you, he was getting a lot of attention and was kind enough to actually pose in a lot of pictures with a lot of people. But no one was asking me. No one wanted to be in a picture with me.
Wow.
I was not getting that kind of attention. So he really took it in stride. I got to give him credit. But I understand because when you're there, especially in Beijing, you really feel it. You
Yeah.
feel that you stand out when you're different than the bulk of the folks around you.
Yeah, for sure.
So to pick up on Artsy, that move that brought you back into a CMO role
Yeah.
after you'd been doing the entrepreneurial thing for a minute. How did that come about? Was that something where they sought you out, they found you and said, "Hey, we really want you for this role"?
Yeah. So a couple things kind of coincided with the artsy thing. So number one, I had started a platform called ArtX, which was going to be a competitor to Artsy, but with a different business model of going to artists directly and not working with galleries, which is something I still believe in, actually. And then that caught the attention of Artsy, but it wasn't like, hey, we're going to work together. And then there was a shift and there was a change in CEOs, where Mike Stipe stepped in as the new CEO. And when I saw him step in as CEO, I wanted to like meet him, like engage with him, because I'd already engaged with the team before, but I wanted to engage with the new CEO. And when we spoke, he said, hey, I'm actually looking for a CMO. And I was like, you know? And to be fully just completely frank, my most successful company I ever started was Pop Social. And, Pop Social had grown to an 8-figure brand, small team. I mean, we were printing money, right? And Instagram started changing a bunch of stuff that like limited our ability to be effective for our social media tools, and which can happen to anybody, any entrepreneur. And so I saw revenue declining, right? And that was revenue that I actually was using as capital for ArtX. So when that revenue started declining, I didn't have the capital to pay for my RX team the way that I wanted to. So for me, I at that point I got really passionate about the mission of democratizing the art world. And so when I reconnected with Artsy and I talked to Mike and he told me about the CMO role, it presented this opportunity of like, hey, I can kind of kill two birds with one stone here. One, become CMO of a really, really well known brand, an established brand. And then two, at the same time, do something I'm passionate about for the first time in my career from a job perspective, right? Like truly, genuinely passionate about. And that was art. And so those two things worked out. I mean, I was 29 years old at the time. So I was still super young. And, they were talking to people a lot older, a lot more experienced. But I got very lucky because this CEO at the time didn't know the art world and I knew the art world. And those other candidates didn't know the nuances of the art world. And so he took a flyer and took a chance on a 29, 30-year-old CMO.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you get to Artsy. So let's talk a bit about that relationship that you had with that CEO. I've heard you talk a little bit about this,
Yes. Yeah.
and it obviously influenced what you did next, because the role that you had after that is the one that you're in now, where you went from being an entrepreneurial CEO to a CMO again, but for a global company, to now being a CEO, but really for a much different type of company, a company that isn't your own company. Talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've told the story before, but I knew that my next role, I didn't want to be a CMO again. you know. And one of the reasons I thought Artsy was a good place for me was because I thought it was one of the few companies that might actually get a chance to move into the CEO seat from CMO. And so when I started, after obviously getting some wins on the board first, I want to, say that I told my CEO that, hey, I want to be a CEO and I want your job one day, and
Yeah, not a job like yours. I want literally
I
your
want your
job.
job. Not right now, but I love the art space. I love Artsy as a company, and I would love to like being CEO of Artsy at the time was my dream job because your dream job oftentimes is not your dream job is not what you even thought of yet, you know? And so I only knew what I saw, and at that point it was Artsy. And he took a lot of time to help mold me as uh you know uh as a CEO, and despite being a CMO and taking the extra time to help mentor me in that way, and even encourage me to connect and get coaching and stuff like that. And I started working with Chad Dickerson, who's the former CEO of Etsy, and he became a mentor for me as well. And during that time, I got reached out to for a lot of CMO opportunities, tons. And I would say no. And I would say no. And I would say no again. I kept saying no. And I even have recruiters laugh at me when I said, hey, I want to be a president or CEO. Like I didn't want to be a CMO again, but I knew exactly what I wanted. And when the Kickstarter opportunity came by, it was really is a culmination of all of the work that I've done in my career, all of the success I've had as a marketer, all the success I had as an entrepreneur, but also treating people with kindness because when they went around asking people about me, it was only positive things. And that can't be said about maybe some of the other candidates, right? For the role. And so I think the Kickstarter moment was just a culmination of me sticking to my guns, knowing what I wanted to do, and at the same time, all of the hard work paid off.
At Kickstarter now, you've had so much success, so much growth. You
Yeah.
just recently celebrated your 3-year anniversary as the
Yeah.
CEO. What is it that is driving all that success and that growth? What do you think really has made that difference?
I want to answer that question, but the one last thing I forgot to say is why I chose the role. And I could give you a bunch of like the mission and all those things mean so much to me. The mission is a huge part of why I'm here at Kickstarter. Huge. You know, but listen, man, I was 32 years old interviewing for this role. The opportunity to be CEO of a global household name brand in your early 30s that has a super positive impact on the world. It was just like, I was like, wait, this company is made for me, you know? And again, sometimes your dream job or dream role is something that you haven't even thought of for yourself. And I believe Kickstarter is really a dream type job with all of the things considered. And so it really was about the mission, but also it was a can't miss opportunity at that point in my career. Laying the foundation, I think that number one is listening to our users, our customers, our community. What I did over the first couple years of my tenure was not anything in my mind that groundbreaking, even though some people may perceive it that way, but I was just listening to our users. I went out and built the products and the features and made the changes in the company that people had been asking for over a decade, you know? And to me, I think just the willingness to have that level of focus of really delivering for your users has been something that has been super rewarding for us. I think number two is new business lines. So when I came to Kickstarter, we only made money one way, right? Now we make money four different ways. So we have new business lines. You know, so in my time here, there's three new business lines. There's three new ways that Kickstarter makes money. And that has been also very helpful building and getting more capital in the company. I think uh the or I'll say two more things. One is building a great team, like building a great, diverse, kick-ass team that is mission driven, that knows their stuff, has been absolutely major. And then the last thing I would say, which is appropriate for this, is the investment in the brand, right? Like really rejuvenating the brand, investing in building the new Kickstarter of today has definitely paid its dividends as well.
And I know there's a lot of people that take inspiration from all of those points. Absolutely. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to then follow in your footsteps?
I don't want anyone to follow in my footsteps. I think everyone should follow in their own footsteps. You ever see someone's like footprints in the snow? And I'm not talking about the nice snow. I'm talking about the nasty snow, right? Those are my footsteps. Go and find that white snow. Find that clear white snow and look at my path and follow and look at my path. But hey, you might want to go over here. You might want to do this. But you don't have to. I don't want anyone to follow in my footsteps. I hope that I'm a positive influence on people. I hope that I can change as many lives as I possibly can. But I really do believe that everyone's story and experience is different. Just the same way you talked about you and your friend in China. You guys are in the same place. You probably had a lot of similar interests and had two completely different experiences. And so for me, I'm very weary of giving people advice in that way. But I would say just create your own lane, create your own story, learn from my mistakes, but don't follow my footsteps.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the end of the conversation. We're going to be coming up to our lightning round soon.
Okay.
But before we go there, one question I want to make sure I ask is how do you take care of your own health and well being? You know, you're a really busy guy. You have a lot going on. You're running a fast growing company. You're on a
Yeah.
board.
Yep.
There's a lot of commitments and a finite amount of time. How do you focus on yourself and your well being?
Discipline is trying to add as much discipline. And this is evolving thing, by the way. Adding discipline into my life in terms, especially how I treat my body, how I eat. Like, it's so easy to be like, oh man, I just want some takeout instead of like sitting down and maybe eating some salmon and eating salad and things like that. So I've been much more intentional about that. I've also been very much more intentional about sleep and cutting off my devices and everything. I would work till 2, 3 in the morning at times. I don't do that anymore. I am very intentional about having a cutoff time for myself, for my health. Also making time for self care, whether it's going to see a film or getting a massage or any of those things, like just really truly making time for self care. The one thing that I need to work on better is consistency in the gym. That's the one thing. But like eating, sleeping, self care, I'm like miles and miles ahead. I cannot figure out this travel and workout thing, man. It really, it really disrupts me. And so with the amount that I travel, I mean, I'm traveling right now. That like I need to figure that piece out. But that's the final piece.
Have you ever tried just looking at the really quick sort of workout videos on YouTube, the self paced, simple calisthenic stuff? You don't need any weights. It's really straightforward. It's like a 7 minute workout, that sort of thing.
Look, see, look, you're already improving my life. I'm gonna check it out.
I'll send you something afterwards. I'll text it to you
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay, cool.
So, speaking of movies, you mentioned movies. Is there a movie or a show or a book or something that you've enjoyed recently that folks out there should check out?
I'm glad you asked. I don't know when this episode is coming out, and I don't know if it'll still be in the movie theaters. But One Battle After Another, the new Paul Thomas Anderson film, is the best film, in my opinion, of the year. And I'm a big Sinners fan. Like Sinners all day, every day. Ryan Coogler is the man. It's close, but man, I have not felt that in a movie theater in a long time. I think Sinners and those two movies, man, that was a incredible experience this year. But One Battle After Another, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Tiana Taylor is phenomenal. The whole cast is just Sean Penn in like. Have you seen it yet?
No, I haven't yet. It's been on my list. I've been reading about comparisons between Sinners and, One Battle After
Oh, don't
Another.
read about
It's pretty much at the top of the list. I just haven't had a chance to go yet.
don't read anything. Just go see it. It is incredible. In the day and age of like streaming slop and all the things, like this is real art and meaningful art.
Well, it's time for the lightning round.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Here's the rules of the lightning round. I'm going to ask you a few questions. You're going to have two options for each one. No room to elaborate. You just got to pick one or the other. You ready?
All right, let's do it.
Comedy or drama?
Drama,
Roller coasters or bumper cars?
roller coasters,
Day or night?
night,
Teleportation or time travel?
teleportation.
Breakfast, sweet or savory?
Um, Savory.
Okay. What's your go-to hype song?
My go-to hype song. I have two. I can't give two, huh?
You can give two. I'll allow it.
So one is have you ever seen Rocky 4?
Yeah.
So there's a training montage on Rocky 4 and he's getting ready to fight Ivan Drago. It's like he's like in there, he has like the beard, the whole thing. And there's a song playing in the background called Hearts on Fire. I don't even know who sings it, but it's so like if you just want to get like just motivated, that is the thing. Like I will literally watch the montage because the song is so good. It's so good. Probably the first time that answer has been on the podcast, by the way. Hearts on Fire, Rocky Four montage. Just you can listen to it or watch it. I'm telling you, you're gonna go crazy. And then You Don't Know by Jay-Z on the Blueprint album.
One or the other, huh?
Yeah, one or the other.
Okay, one or the other. All right, well, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm glad we got a chance to have this conversation. I really appreciate you making the time and
Yeah.
also for sharing some stories that no one else out there has actually heard before.
Yeah. You got some new stuff, man.
And it's just been a great time having this conversation. So thanks again.
Cool. Thanks, man.
This episode was brought to you by Philo Ads. Philo Ads delivers premium content, a CTV first audience, and zero stress ad buying that works for everyone, from scrappy startups to savvy marketers. So go ahead, shake up your ad buying strategy, and launch your next campaign with Philo Ads today. Make sure to visit ads.philo.tv to learn more. That's ads.philo.tv.